You're born in Brooklyn to Russian immigrants who left Moscow in 1991 with 2 suitcases and a plan that never materialized. Your father drives a taxi. Your mother cleans offices in Midtown. They speak Russian at home, you speak English everywhere else. By the time you're 10, you're translating lease agreements and medical bills. By 15, you're the bridge between their world and this one. You're fluent in both languages and stuck between both cultures, too Russian for the American kids. Too American for the Russian community, you belong nowhere completely. That particular kind of displacement turns out to be exactly what the CIA is looking for. The recruiter approaches you at NYU. You're studying international relations, 21 years old, top of your Russian language class. She sits next to you at a coffee shop off Washington Square, says she works for a consulting firm. Asks if you've ever thought about using your skills for something important. You've seen enough spy movies to know what this is. You say yes anyway, not because you're patriotic. Because you're curious what it feels like to be chosen for something. The vetting process takes 8 months, background checks, psych evaluations, polygraphs. They ask about your family. Your politics, your debts, your secrets. You pass because you don't have secrets interesting enough to disqualify you. You're clean, bilingual, and forgettable. That's the profile they need. Training is 6 months at a facility you're never told the location of. They teach you how to lie under pressure, how to maintain a cover identity, how to spot surveillance, how to communicate with a handler without being obvious. They teach you what to do if you're compromised. The answer mostly is, try not to get compromised. You graduate, they give you a target. Brighton Beach, Russian organized crime. They want someone inside, not deep inside, just close enough to observe, report, and extract when needed. They set you up with a cover. You're an accountant for small businesses. Russian speakers preferred. You rent an office, you print business cards, you become someone new who's actually just you with a different employer. The first client is a restaurant on Coney Island Avenue. The owner is a man named Gennady. Late 50s, gold chains, a handshake that lasts too long. He needs help with his books. You look at his books. The restaurant does $12,000 a week in revenue on paper. It seats 30 people and is never full. You know what that means. You do the books anyway. You fix the discrepancies. You make the numbers look legitimate. That's your job, not the CIA job, the cover job. They overlap more than you expected. Gennady likes you. He introduces you to his brother-in-law, Victor, who owns a construction company. Victor introduces you to his partner, Alexei, who imports goods from Eastern Europe. Within 6 months, you're doing accounting for 11 businesses. 8 of them are fronts. 3 are legitimate and unfortunate. You're in. Your handler is a man you know only as Paul. You meet him once a month at a bookstore in Park Slope. You browse the history section. He browses travel. You exchange information by leaving notes in specific books. Sometimes he asks you questions. Mostly he just listens to what you've learned. Names, addresses, business structures, wire transfer patterns. You're not stealing secrets, you're just remembering details. The CIA has people who turn details into intelligence. You're just the collector. For 2 years, it's manageable. You're not doing anything dramatic. You're an accountant who happens to report what he sees. You file taxes for criminals and then file reports for the government. It's compartmentalized, it's clean, it's almost boring. Then Alexei invites you to dinner, not at a restaurant. At his house in Mill Basin. You've never been to anyone's house. That's a line you haven't crossed. You can't say no without raising suspicion. You go. His wife makes pelmeni. His daughter Katia is home from Columbia Law. She's 24. She's smart. She asks you about your work. You give the rehearsed answers. She doesn't believe you, but she doesn't push. After dinner, Alexei walks you to your car. He says, "You're good with numbers. I have a bigger project. Are you interested?" You say yes because saying no isn't an option. The project is a shipping company, import-export, legitimate on the surface. Alexei wants you to structure it properly, set up LLCs, open bank accounts. Route payments through jurisdictions that don't ask questions. You know what you're building. You're building a money laundering infrastructure. You report every detail to Paul. Paul says, keep going. We need to see how deep this goes. You start spending more time with Alexei. Dinners, meetings, parties, you meet people you're not supposed to meet. A man from Brighton Beach named Dmitry who runs sports betting. A man from Sheepshead Bay named Boris who moves stolen cars to Eastern Europe. A man from Moscow named Yuri who doesn't explain what he does. You're not just observing anymore, you're embedded. There's a difference. Observers watch from outside. Embedded means you're part of the system. Katia starts texting you. Coffee, lunch, a movie, you know this is dangerous. Personal relationships complicate covers, you tell Paul. He says, use your judgment, that's not guidance, that's permission to make a mistake. You meet her for coffee anyway, she's easy to talk to, she doesn't ask about work, she asks about you. What you want, where you're from. The real answers are classified, you give her edited versions, she seems to believe them or she's pretending to believe them, you can't tell anymore. The operation escalates when Yuri asks you to fly to Cyprus. He needs help setting up accounts there, you tell Paul. Paul says, go where the wire, you fly to Larnaca. You meet with a banker who doesn't ask questions because he's paid not to. You open 3 corporate accounts. You route $4 million through structures so complex that even you need a diagram to track them. Yuri is pleased. He pays you $20,000 in cash, you report everything. Paul says, good work, stay close to Yuri. Staying close to Yuri means staying close to people who make Alexei look like a small business owner. Yuri's network extends to Moscow, to Cyprus, to London. You're not tracking Brighton Beach mob activity anymore. You're tracking an international criminal organization with ties to oligarchs and you suspect Russian intelligence. Paul confirms it. He says, this is bigger than we thought. Keep going. You make a mistake on a Tuesday, you're at a restaurant with Alexei and Yuri, your phone vibrates, a text from Paul, you glance at it, 2 seconds. Yuri notices, he asks, who texts you during dinner, you say, my mother, he says, you look worried, is she okay, you say, she's fine, he watches you for 5 seconds longer than comfortable. Then he smiles, you don't sleep that night, you replay the moment over and over. Did he see the message? Did he see the sender name? Did you react wrong? You don't know, you never know. The next week, Alexei asks you to handle something sensitive. A shipment is coming through Newark, container freight, he doesn't say what's in it. He just needs the customs paperwork to clear smoothly. You know a guy, he says, you make a call, the container clears, you report it. Paul says, we need to know what was in that container. You say, I don't know, he says, find out, you ask Alexei. Alexei says, electronics, you don't believe him, Paul doesn't either. Katia tells you she loves you on a Sunday. You're walking through Prospect Park, it's fall, leaves everywhere. She stops and says it, you weren't expecting it, you should have been expecting it, you've been dating for 6 months. You say it back because not saying it back would be suspicious. You mean it and you don't mean it, you care about her, you also know that caring about her is a vulnerability you can't afford. That night you tell Paul, he says, does she know? You say no, he says, keep it that way, but the problem with cover identities is that they're built from pieces of real life. The lies are thin. The truth leaks through. Katia is smart. She starts noticing things, why you're always vague about your childhood, why you never introduce her to your family, why you check your phone at odd hours. She asks, are you hiding something? You say no, she says, I don't believe you, you say, I'm not hiding anything. The lie sits between you like a third person. The FBI raids Dmitry's operation on a Thursday. 6 agents, warrants, arrests Dmitry, Boris and 4 others. The whole network panics. Alexei calls you at midnight, he says, we need to talk. You meet him at a diner in Gravesend. He's scared. He asks, did you hear anything? Did anyone ask you questions? You say no, who would ask me questions? He says, you do the books. If they come for the books, they come for you. You say, I'll be careful. He says, careful isn't enough. People are talking, people are scared, scared people make mistakes. You report the conversation to Paul. He says, this is good. Pressure makes people flip. Stay close, see who talks. You say, what if they think I talked? He says, you didn't, you're clean. Just stay calm. You're not calm, you're terrified, because being clean doesn't matter if someone decides you're not. Yuri calls you to a meeting, not at a restaurant, at a warehouse in Red Hook. You've never been to a warehouse. Warehouses are where bad things happen in movies. You go because not going is worse. Yuri is there with two men you don't know. He says, "We have a problem." Someone informed on Dmitri. We think it's someone close. He looks at you when he says close. You say, "I don't know anything about that." He says, "I believe you, but we need to be sure." One of the men steps forward. He's holding something, a phone, your phone, the one you thought you lost last month. You reported it stolen. You got a new one. They had it the whole time. Yuri says, "We checked it very carefully. The messages, the contacts, everything." You stop breathing. He says, "It's clean. We didn't find anything." You breathe again. He hands it back. He says, "But if we miss something, we'll know, and then we'll talk again." You take the phone, you leave, you throw it in the East River on your way home. You tell Paul you're done. You meet him at the bookstore. You say, "I can't do this anymore. They're watching me." He says, "We're almost there. One more month." You say, "They checked my phone." He says, "And they found nothing." You're safe. You say, "I don't feel safe." He says, "6 months ago you gave us the biggest organized crime network we've mapped in a decade. We need you to finish this." You say, "What if they find out?" He says, "They won't." You say, "You can't promise that." He says, "No, I can't." You keep going because stopping is admitting fear, and admitting fear is suspicious. You show up, you do the books. You attend the meetings, you smile, you lie, you report. The gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be gets so thin you can't find it anymore. Katia breaks up with you on a cold night in December. She says, "I know you're lying about something, I don't know what, but I can't do this anymore." You don't argue, you can't tell her the truth. You can't make her stay with lies. She leaves. You sit in your apartment and realize she was the only real thing in 2 years of pretending. And you just lost her to protect a cover identity that's protecting a life that isn't yours. The arrests happen in February. Coordinated raids, FBI, DEA, Treasury, 38 people. Alexei, Yuri. Boris, half of Brighton Beach. You're not arrested, you're extracted. Paul picks you up at 6 a.m. says, "Pack a bag, you're relocating." You say, "Where?" He says, "Does it matter?" You pack, you leave. You're given a new name, a new city, a new job, same person, different paperwork. The CIA thanks you for your service. They give you a commendation you're not allowed to tell anyone about. You're living in Phoenix now. You work for a financial consulting firm. Real job, real clients, real life. You don't speak Russian anymore, not out loud. Sometimes you dream in it. You wake up thinking you're late for a meeting with Alexei, then you remember. You check the news sometimes. Alexei got 15 years, Yuri got 20, Dmitri took a plea deal. Katia finished law school. She's working at a firm in Manhattan. You'll never see her again, you'll never explain, she'll never know who you really were, maybe you don't either. Some nights you wonder if it was worth it. 38 arrests, millions in assets seized, a network dismantled. That's the official story. The unofficial story is that you spent 3 years lying to everyone, including yourself. You fell in love with a woman you betrayed. You built friendships with men you helped imprison. You became someone else so thoroughly that coming back feels like wearing a costume of your own life. The CIA doesn't run on patriotism. Patriotism is just the recruitment pitch. What it runs on is people who are good at being no one, people who can disappear into a role and surface years later wondering which version was real. You weren't trapped inside the Russian Mafia. You were trapped inside yourself. The asset wasn't the intelligence you gathered, it was you, and now you're just trying to figure out what's left.